so much for being here. We are living in the time of the spiritual renaissance. It's a time on earth where the knowledge from the greater universe is being shared in its purest form to revitalize and re-inspire humanity. As we've discussed in previous videos, the knowledge being shared comes through Ian and Pearl Rogers at Sphinx Spiritual in the form of trance mediumship. They have a direct line of communication with entities in the spirit world who have agreed to share their wisdom and teaching with us on Earth. These entities form the Sphinx Spiritual Council. Each member of the council has lived a considerable number of lives before, where they influenced, they fought for change, justice, and for love to prevail. Ian and Pearl have explained in previous videos that the entities elected to stand together and support the Earth, dedicating their whole selves to bringing energy and knowledge forward. What you're about to see is powerful and the first of its kind ever. You're about to hear from each of the council members with a message about the spiritual renaissance. It's a rare interview with some of the most inspiring entities we have ever known. This video will change what you thought you knew and inspire those of you who are meant to join the movement, to follow the flag set high by spirit. It was an absolute privilege to witness what you're about to see, so I truly hope you get as much out of it as I did. Enjoy.
We're now commencing the trance mediumship session with Ian, bringing his guide, Crazy Horse.
In the time of the Indian, the symbol between Earth and the Great Spirit, or any one on Earth, was the wombly, the eagle. The eagle was the animal that represented carriage of messages to the world of spirit, to the Great Spirit. We knew when I was an Indian that it was critical for life on Earth to be prosperous, not in a financial sense, for the people, for the Indian, because we were the people. It was critical that we relied upon the guidance of the Great Spirit. Of course, I knew that the wombly, the eagle, was not the one who carried the messages, but it was symbolic, and many believed, and they were entitled to believe, because it gave them something to hope for. It's no different today. The work of this council, overseeing this renaissance of spirit, is the bridge between the work of the highest levels in the world of spirit, in the spiritual world, and Earth. And we convey what is required, and we convey it to these two. They in turn convey it. Let us not be confused about the renaissance of spirit. This is but a starting point. It is giving power back to the people, because it has been stolen from the people over time. What we are doing is leaving behind a way of life, a way to stop being disenfranchised, a way to find their identity earlier, a way to escape, to be adventurous, to search in the way of the Indian. But we want it to be something that's gentle, for the true spirit of the Indian was gentle. We wished no harm to the animals. We wished no harm to the environment. It fed us. It fed our ancestors. It would feed our future generations. To live with that, we had to be gentle. We had to embrace it. We wanted to induce no fear in the animals, so they would be with us. Could you imagine a world where people did not try to make other people fearful of them? Where people had animals as pets and tried not to order them on command, but to be as one, to feel them. So they decided to work as one together. This is the way of the Indian. This is the way of the future. What we want is more purity, more simplicity. What we want as people to learn through time, to have the power to control their own life, to do what is right because they know it's right, because it's right not only for them, but for the rest of the people. This is the way. This is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Crazy Horse. Moving forward with the Renaissance as of today, is there a message you would like to give to the people watching this as the first step they can take from here?
Renew your acquaintanceship with yourself. For you knew yourself at birth. You forgot yourself within 3 years. Renew it. Learn who you are. Once you know who you are, you truly know what it is that you want to share.
Thank you, Crazy Horse.
Thank you.
We will now have Kristian Hahnemann.
Thank you. There was a time when it was considered that the world was long and flat, and the round edges of the earth did not exist. It was considered that people who did not believe in what the majority of people believed in were heretics. It was believed that the future of the world relied entirely upon what was being given to them by the rulers, by the landowners. It was believed that no love needed to pass between those in power and those who served. It was believed that the only love that really existed was those in power loving each other. It was not believed that those who worked at a lower level providing the riches for the people, for the rich people, had any need for love. It was believed that it was sufficient for them to have a living, to have food, to be able to create a family. This is what was believed. How many leaders today do you see try to love the people? How many leaders do you hear say, all that is important is financial policies, economics? That is all they know. From the middle centuries until now, there has been little to no change, certainly in leadership. This is sad. And it does not leave much hope for the world. Let us examine this for a moment. The world is led on the basis that there was certainly the so-called free world, which of course is not free. It is led on the basis that without enough money, there will be a catastrophe. Everything will fail, it will crash, no one will eat, people will die, etc. Who would believe that? There are enough structures in place to ensure that that is not the case. But it would just cause a wholesale redistribution of priorities and food, etc. So this premise is that everything relies on heartless wealth distribution or lack of distribution, and that is enough to satisfy the minions. That is scary. What is more worrying is that people still vote for people in so-called democracies who advocate no love, who advocate division, and who advocate finances. This decries everything that has been taught to humans. Spirituality, what we know and what you know, is that you have come to earth to increase your knowledge and to increase your capacity to love no matter what your circumstances. Why is it that the rich have more difficulty loving than the poor? Their priorities are wrong, and they hold themselves up as leaders to be emulated. But for what? For false priorities. This comes from a belief that they are so important, that they have to remain rich, that they have to remain in power. Who have you heard stand up and say, I have lost my money, I have lost my power, but I have increased in knowledge and love. I am happy. Why don't you try it? Why don't you relieve some of the pressure upon your life so that you can be like me? You would not have heard this message. And that is terribly sad. Priorities, my friend, they are wrong. And they are being taught to you by people in authority and power. And this cannot continue. Just from this example I have given you, over hundreds of years, not much is learned from those who put themselves into temporary positions of power because they want to hold on to it. If no one else can get it right, the people have to. This Renaissance is over the people, for the people, because they know better. They just have to believe that they have the power to be released from the structure of what has been put in front of them from birth and prior, because it is cultural. Emotion, including the emotion of love, the emotion of earth, the emotion of sadness, all of these, and joy, they are more important than how much money or power you have. They determine you. They create what happens within your body. An happier person generally is a more well person. Our job is to leave behind a legacy that there is a way to receive information that is different but more important than what we have been fed. In this case, it will of course be what you've been fed over time by people who assume and fail in positions of power. And for all of you who crave for power, every person who has had power on earth and who has failed it or abused it has a karmatic debt of great significance and difficulty. It is not something most would want for. All you have to do, no matter what your circumstances, is to learn to be more generous. Learn of the figure of 8, where we all encompassed together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristian. What is the first step you would advise someone listening to you who wishes to make change from growing up and being a member of a family culture where money represents success within that family?
Yes, this answer would cause people to think about how it is applicable. The conflicts, the fight to become successful under the guise of money or power causes an intensity of forcefulness, a growth of imagined ego, but nothing else. It is hollow. And sooner or later, generally by the late 20s, the hollowness of what they are fighting for begins to appear, predominantly in women. First step is the humble can love much more greatly and more easily than the egotistical. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristian. We will now listen to Leonardo da Vinci.
My name is Leonardo. It was not a burden to me to be gifted in the way that I was, but it was a burden for so many around me. I had access to knowledge that would change the world long into the future. My remit, my role, was to bring enough knowledge for discovery for 500 years. One of the reasons that in my painting I never saw a painting as finished was to leave a message. Nothing is finished. Once something new is given, is provided, there is continual opportunity to improve it. There's that is not innovation, that is just improvement. I'm not sure what innovation is. For a new idea is creation, or in reality recreation, because it does not come out of nowhere. It comes from other place of existence. It comes from the spiritual world. It comes from a combination of these. I was not a despot, and I did not like working for despots. Those who would rule with fear, with a so-called iron hand. Anyone who rules with this iron hand is a fool. For what can you feel with an iron hand? You can feel nothing. And if you can't feel, you can't create. You can't improve. You can't recreate. You can do little. You can exist. One of the primary purposes of a people on earth is to observe each other, is to understand those who are more like you, to find them, to seek them out, and then to challenge each other. Challenge each other for improvement, how to do better. It was with all of my apprentices. I gave them great autonomy, great roles. I encouraged their work. I showed them what they did that could be improved upon. It gave them the scope to search for themselves, for new. There is so little new. There is so little scope on this earth for new. Because people are not doing the search in a pure sense. A searcher for truth cannot come from a preconceived notion of what the outcome should be. That is narrow, that is a filtered, that is not a science. If in my small community of workers, of followers, of friends, of associates, the camaraderie was intense. There was little to no jealousy. Everyone encouraged everyone to do better, to improve upon themselves, to challenge not what is within you, but what can be brought to you. For the future of the earth cannot come from the earth. It has had a lot of years to achieve that. As you know, in the scheme of things in the greater universe, the earth is young, but it is behind schedule because of the particular need for people to do things for themselves, made worse by those in the power who do things for themselves. I was a mentor in my final years for the King of France and for his sister Marguerite. And what I implored upon them is that you are emissary, you are between this great world out there and the people. You have to be generous to the people, all of the people. You have to show them that you love them. You have to show them that you appreciate them, that they are important because their life has been spent not feeling important. They should not get a great thrill out of being visited by the king. They should expect it, for this is their role. And you should not just go by and wave from a distance as if you are a robot. What you are meant to do is to, in every time you teach or reach your people, you express your love to them, your appreciation. You are not above the people, you are over the people. That is what I taught them more than anything, the importance of the distribution of feeling. And that distribution of feeling incorporated the distribution of wealth, including the wealth and the beauty of art. If every person felt important, if every person felt touched, they will want to change the world. And they did. I would like to be remembered as much for this time as for everything I did scientifically. All that I did in many ways has helped the earth. And I would say one of the most important is what I designed, to how cities should work under the ground to distribute waste. That has allowed a building beyond what was speculated as possible. It has reduced problems with the health. That was important, but I would much prefer to be remembered as someone who felt so much love, who felt that everyone who wanted to see me, who I agreed to see, would leave feeling embraced. For the time we were together, we merged as one. Superiority is a lonely place. Thank you.
Leonardo, what message would you give to the scientists of our world today?
Find another job or be true to your gift. For the benefactors of a science, ask not what you will get. Just ask them to explore from within themselves as to what they believe they need to discover, which will change. Advancement scientifically on Earth would seem to be vast, but they are not. Little is being discovered that is not known or believed. Free, some branch of a science, to learn of the meaning and the beauty and the thrill and the upliftment of scientific discovery. That is what is important. Not innovation, not recreating something that is known, or just improving. That is almost everything that happens.
Thank you, Leonardo. We will now talk with Sigmund Freud.
The mind is complex. What I discovered in the search of the mind was the different levels where information was stored, where it was hidden. The mind is not meant to hold information that is not available. It is meant to hold information which is readily accessible. What I learned is that humans have a peculiar ability to section off parts of the mind and not use them. Mostly this was because the parts of the mind that they chose to section off had bad memories, not good. But because most of life's experiences involved more bad than good. More and more components or compartments of the mind were being cut off. Therefore, man was able to use less and less voluntarily. Too scared within himself to open up all components of the mind. For that brought a fear. They did not want bad experiences to repeat. What that meant is that they didn't learn from the bad experience. One of the great problems within the mind and with human condition is anger. People are scared of anger. Most people are fueled by anger. It drives them somewhere. So they are both fearful of it and then use it. This can cause, and usually does, catastrophic outcomes for a person. Something bad has happened. Invariably, it causes a person to be angry. They lock it away. And when they think something is going to happen to them, which might be the same, they will be angry again. As they use the fuel, they open it up just to bring out the anger, to use the fuel to change and go in a different direction. Thus, what they're trying to do is to avoid what they didn't learn the first time, trying to avoid learning it the second time. So it is going to come up and up and up and up, and their life is now in turmoil because they cannot progress out of this wheel of minute self-discovery. Therefore, what I recognized is that the free-flowing form of the mind as was meant, was constructed, was reduced, constrained is what I mean, by people as a method of avoidance under the guise of reducing the pain and the negativity which might approach them in their life without being clever enough to realize that if it did not come from there, it will come from there. It will come, no matter what they do, it is going to come. I learned that people are living their life in the now. What they want is what satisfies them right now. And they will put aside their growth, their learning. They will cast away opportunities which can help them in their life, in their charted pathway, so they can have an easier life. And then this easier life becomes one of obstruction, self-obstruction and obstruction from others, one of great constraint within the body, where they begin to endure great hurts. And what I recognized was that for the mind to work properly, it has to free flow, it has to follow the rule of concomitant, where one thought leads to another, naturally, without any impact, where you cannot directly say that there is a direct correlation between any two thoughts or parts of the body. It travels in ways that cannot be charted. And it varies person to person, situation to situation, depending upon what they have hidden in their compartments. People have to learn is that in order to get to a journey of love, they have to walk through the portals of pain and desire to take themselves through that, because a better world waits for them on the other side. Unfortunately, on the way, many people hurt themselves, lock themselves away, and even some people kill themselves. Take away their own life rather than face pain of a temporary nature. For that to change, there has to be a belief in something bigger, something greater, something more grand than just themselves. There has to be something that will instruct and dominate their thought processes to unblock the parts of their mind that are stopping them achieve freedom. Freedom to be who they're meant to be. That is all freedom is, to be who you're meant to be. It takes a great daring to achieve this. And you have to feel like you're part of something greater, where you feel unified. There is a unity between you and a higher power for you to find what is within you, to achieve what you need to achieve. It is sad that the world and the people of the world are so blocked. My work was exploratory, to understand the mind. The results were depressing. The ways to unblock it are many and varied, but it can't happen whenever man thinks of himself as alone and not part of something greater. How can you love or get love if you're alone? So this argument of being alone is an argument of convenience. I want everything that suits me, but I will not give to get it, which is an argument of laziness. I have a message, and that the world can only improve itself through cooperation with each other and between this world and the higher world. Thank you.
Sigmund, may I ask for practitioners of the mind and emotions who reject your work or have, for whatever reason, difficulty in accepting your work, what would you say to them today to assist their understanding?
My work was exploratory. Like all of our work, it was never meant to be the final word. It was always meant to be a foundation from which could be improved with greater knowledge. What I know now is much greater than what I knew then. Instead of complaining and trying to find fault, find improvement. Thank you.
We will now talk to the lady who was Her Royal Highness Princess Diana.
The journey of being a member of the royal family was just that. It was a journey. It was not an end point for me. And I would not want anyone to feel sad in any way that it was a journey that came to an end, where I was excluded from being a member of the royal family. That was a release. It allowed me to achieve what I came to do. All being a member of that family allowed me to do was to gain the position to achieve what I was meant to. Of course, I left before my time, which wasn't of my choice or my doing. But be that as it may, it was always meant to expose that for no good reason, within a structure of royalty, there is a place for love, there is a place for humility, and there is a place for equality, where pomp and splendor are very important, but they're not the most important. Any institution, including a monarchy, it should be judged on how it nurtures and holds its own, how it keeps them together. Now I know you feel slighted at what happened to me, but I would wish you to leave that behind. Those who treated me in the way that they did, including leading up and including my death, that is their journey. It is not my journey. I believe, firstly, of the mistakes I made, of the difficulty I had of being alone and feeling alone. And I had to come to grips with the aloneness in a marriage in name only. I found my joy in my children. I found diversions in men. I was desperate to be known. I was desperate to be accepted. And I really wanted to be a part of something, and eventually I came to realize that within the monarchy I was a part of nothing, because it became embarrassing, and it came down to a choice between my husband and I. And that was a choice that could only go one way, and that was not mine. And this was quite clear to me. Feeling that exclusion and that loneliness and that aloneness, not in a fit of pique even though it appeared it. What I tried to do was what I came to do, to rise above all of the issues that surrounded me, to recognize that there were so many people whose lives were difficult, all in different degrees of difficulty, and what I wanted to do was to show them that I cared. What I wanted to do was put right the wrongs of my life within that monarchy by treating people differently to that. It took me a long time. And I went through all forms of ill thoughts and revenge. But having finally cast those aside, I recognized that I found myself in this place where I had a genuine and real role for society, where they needed a model that could rise above these incidents and these pains and could then treat all of the people with equality, with love. But apart from that, there was a secondary role that I had, and that comes back to being within the structure of the monarchy. I wanted to open up to my son the possibility and the probability that the monarchy could work differently. It could be much more as one with the people, not above. It could help much more. It did not need to appear superior to work. I wanted to open up in my son's mind through the way I lived my life, particularly after I left the monarchy, of where power really resides. And that's in the ability for one to share one's true self and the genuineness of loving and caring. Whether or not that succeeded, we don't yet know. But the signs at least are positive. And he's being guided quite strongly with the actions of his wife. In some way, how he changes will impact upon the success of my life. In another way, the way people changed and appreciated and then expected to be treated equally and with respect and with love. That was what I would consider to be my greatest achievement. It was possible, it was to be expected. Why wouldn't we? We are people, we are humans together, different roles. If you love me, I feel worthwhile to achieve much more. In this way, the world can grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. We are often asked by people, if Diana was here, standing here today, what would she say to her sons?
If I was alive, do you mean?
Now you have the opportunity now,
Oh,
if they ever get to hear it.
yes. My youngest son, you are very sincere. You are deeply loving, but your hurt affects your actions and has led you to be unfairly influenced, to be less than you are. To my eldest son, grasp the future when it comes, for it will require change beyond that which you can currently foresee to succeed. Those given power cannot run away. If you run away, you are telling people that they don't have to face the difficulties of their life. You can't run away from responsibility and position and power and then preach to others about what to do. You must embrace the difficulties of your life and share with others how they too can do the same. Thank you.
We will now talk with Mahatma Gandhi.
All that I wanted was for the people of my country to be free, to be independent, and have the ability to feel better about themselves, because what I recognized in my country was that the people did not feel as they felt constrained to follow cultures which were not their cultures, which were not the cultures in the history of the Indian people. I traveled far and I traveled wide before I took on the responsibility that I felt I needed to within India. And that was to try and understand other worlds, to try and understand this need for different and vastly different cultures. But mostly I wanted to understand why the people of India would want to follow another culture that represented something different to themselves, without in any respect trying to decry the English of the time. I wanted to break down the reverence, and I wanted to break down the fear that people had because they wanted to do and act differently. They wanted to be themselves. They wanted to find an India. And I felt I needed to show a way to liberty. As is known, I did not do this passively. I did it aggressively, but I did not want it to be the take-up of arms, because the killing of each other needs to be avoided at any possible time that this can happen. This is not in any respect spiritual. It could be argued that what I did was against many spiritual rules. But by trying to get the people of India to recognize their power, to recognize who they were, and that they had a position in the future of the world which would one day be dominant, because this is the scope and the ability of India that I knew at the time, but that could never ever come under the rule or the guise of another country, of other cultures. So I needed people to find a belief, and that they would not find it by themselves. So what I wanted them to do was to see that they could follow me, and I would appear and act in the most simple, unobstructive way, but I would do nothing that was not the best for the people of my country. This gave people not only a belief in themselves, but an understanding that they were more powerful than they thought themselves to be. For this is the problem of dictatorships, etc. They try very hard to get the people to believe they have less power than they really have. I was working in the opposite, and it was no good to just stand and shout and scream and fight ideologies and policies, etc. I had to get to the people. I had to touch the heart of the people. This is what I tried to do. This is what I did do. Independence and great changes followed. And in time, this will have the impact which was always meant. But what I did, or what I was able to achieve, was to allow each person to look inside themselves and to recognize their power, their spirit, their energy, and to make a decision on whether or not they wanted to spend their life proud and small, or they wanted to break free and be adventurous and to find the scope of who they could be, and all the difficulties that could come with that, because it was going to be so unknown. But I tried to teach them that the joy of facing the unknown is better than the pain of living constrained. Thank you.
Gandhi, for the people of the world, and particularly our country, who's still living with threats of COVID and illness and sickness at the moment, what would you say to them to help them to get through this?
There has always been different forms of sickness within the world. It travels differently today because of the way that transport works. But whether it travels fast or slow, it still moves. It has been for so long that there has been travel between countries. This is both good and bad in what it brings, but predominantly good. Do not be fearful of something that is physical. The body is meant to overcome it. The body is meant to overcome it by itself, not with any intervention. And it is able to do that, for the body is particularly able to cope. But what is of great shame, what I fought for was liberty of people. And what has happened is that some physical illness has been used to generate great fear and used as a vehicle to take away liberty. This is the single biggest problem. Can people without a leader to help them to do that find it within themselves to move towards wanting freedom once again, so they can face an uncertain future rather than live in a certain future of dictatorship? Thank you.
We will now converse with Francis Bacon.
Well, on one hand, religions are particularly important to the world, and to the formation of groups, formation of beliefs. They're very important. But this notion of sin, I find perturbing. This notion that there's some divine rule, ostensibly from a God, that says you're a sinner, you shall be punished. I find that reprehensible. How many people on earth need to be punished by someone else when they're doing such a fine job of punishing themselves through their failures? I was a person of laws, of rules, hopefully for the betterment of society as I saw it was going to go. But rules for the sake of rules, to restrict liberty, to restrict movement, to restrict freedom, freedom of thought, to have people believe that I can't do this and that and the other because it is a sin against a God. That is quite scary. So what it's doing is drawing together the power of the fear within religion and the fear of the state. And make no mistake, over time, the states are not dumb. They've learned to follow the fear which has traditionally been used within religion. put it, embed it into the state rule, so that most people will act in accord with the rules of the state through fear. So little is done in society to cause people to act for the betterment of each other, I shall act this way because if I don't, I shall be in trouble. Isn't that how people are parented? And so it's taught from childhood and moved up. And therefore people live in a shakiness, with an imbalance within themselves, where their mind is not able to flow freely, where they're not able to think constructively, because everything is destructive. To get somewhere, I shall destroy someone else, or at least hold the threat of destroying someone else. And those who try to work with collaboration, with cooperation, decried as weak. Where power and greatness is described through wealth, no matter how it was achieved. So the priorities of the world are askew. That is a great difficulty. Effectively, what you're taught is what to think and how to think, and what you're not allowed to think about. So in terms of what Sigmund was referring and talking to you about, it's not just the man of mind that chooses to do this, but because the man of mind says, I shall put all hurtful things away, because I don't want to be hurt again, that plays into the cultural aspects of society of those who would rule you to say, well, if you do this, that, or the other, it will be just the same. You shall be punished, you shall be hurt. It will be bad. It's sinful. And therefore, I don't want that to happen to me. I can't think freely or properly about this situation. I just know that I can't be in trouble. I must do what someone else tells me to do. So the freedom of thought is a victim. It was a victim in society in my time, but not as much as it's a victim today. The rules are set by mostly those who are unseen to you, who are wanting to do things that will advantage them. And the populace of the earth are their puppets. Therefore I find that my job is to try and implore people to use their mind fully, in a constructive way, in a way of collaboration, a way of working together. That if I can go and find freedom, who else can I induce to follow me? Who can I allow to see the benefits as well as the difficulties of what I'm doing? Who can be inspired by my spirit, by my desire to change myself and therefore my life? Sad is the man who achieves greatly in his work, but is unhappy and constrained, and who feels he cannot fully be himself. Sad is the woman who does not tell her man where it is a man. That is the case. Sad is the world where there's such a lack of equality, that men and women are different and seen at different levels still in your society. Sad is the world when you have to prove to each other by audacious acts that it's acceptable to have different sexual proclivities. Why can't people feel it's acceptable just to get on with that and do that quietly? Because that is what they want to do. And in living their life with this freedom, they will show others. One of the problems when people in society are mandated to act in certain ways, they will then try to mandate others to follow them through the extremity of their actions. It was always meant that the power of people is to be who they are and to allow others to view that. And for all forms of temples to congregate with each other in groups of likeness, where eventually some will say, I want to move up or on to that temple to learn more. This is the way of the world of spirit. This is how it was meant to be on earth. But how can people grow? How can they change? How can they aspire when they're so used to being mandated? We're not allowed to be any more than what someone tells us we're allowed to be. Otherwise we shall be punished. And I've learned to live in fear. I would like people to have the only fear on earth that they have is the fear of not being free to be themselves. Then we would have something to behold. That's what would happen for a long time. The revolution needs to be. You can impact upon me in so many ways, but you cannot mandate how I think. You cannot mandate how I feel. And I shall allow that to guide my actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. What would you advise that the first practical step is for a person listening to you today who lives in an entirety of fear of making a decision of their own choice?
Whether their parent is alive or dead, stop living in fear of the disapproval of their parent. Thank you.
We will now converse with the living member of the council, Zootor.
What I observe on the earth is that there are many people whose desire is to be good people, whose desire is to share good energy, whose desire is to be uplifted, but it is unassociated with being loving. And this is the core problem. How many of the activities I observe people do cause them to be loving? I watch people flood to events where if whoever they want to perform well performs well, they're uplifted. But I am no more loving. Therefore, what I observe is that this concept of love is not taught. It's not a most important or significant thing for people to do and to learn and to be and to act on earth. It should lead actions. Actions are taken from a feeling of good, no matter what negativity underlies that. Therefore, whether you're following a sport, so long as your team wins, how they did it is unimportant, and with people, so long as you end up dominant and feel good, the cause to another person is unimportant. This brings with it a lack of togetherness, because love always involves others. It is just simple. Selfish people are non-loving people. Selfless people are loving people. You have many, many more selfish than selfless. Why is it that you give awards to the selfless people for helping society, for standing out in their community? Why isn't it that this is the norm? Why isn't it that this is expected? Why isn't it that this is not taught? How many times does someone be given an award for helping others in society and is then taken into schools of all ages to teach them what to do? No. Let us stop at some recognition for your so-called governments have done their job. This is point 2. There is such a lack of teaching by those with knowledge and love together. There are plenty with love, there are plenty with knowledge, there is just a small few with both. They're the ones who will rise. They're the ones who will shine. And it will always be on earth in the stage of evolution that it is, that people will follow false things, because that is the stage of their growth. There is a responsibility with those more evolved to use their power, to use their knowledge, to use their love, to share. The way of the world in the future has to be more sharing. And that must begin with love and be followed by knowledge. It must be made normal for the young, and over time this will change the behaviours of so many, not of all. At the moment, the normal part of society is those who are selfish, who act only in self-interest. The aim of earth is to change that balance. What is strange to me is that the world is full of relationships. Therefore, it should be automatically that there is a cohesiveness of working together. But within his relationships, it is rare that this is so, because that requires work, that requires effort, that requires giving something of yourself. It requires to be not selfish. Until this need to share, this equality of feeling and of generosity to each other can be embraced in relationships, it will not be embraced in the broader world, and this won't happen until this is taught with children. Not to accept a relationship for the sake of it. Don't stay in something false. Be only where you have the right to express your love, right to share with you, the desire to be bigger, to learn of new, to break free of the bubble of existence. It might sound strange to you, and a message from me would be so simple. But in the world I come from, quality is not questioned. Generosity is everywhere. Exclusion is nowhere. Punishment doesn't exist. Love is paramount. That's my world, where we are privy at all times to each other's thoughts and feelings. You are not even generous enough on earth to share your thoughts and feelings. You will keep them to yourselves in case there's something will cause you harm, or there is some gain to you in sharing them. The power to change the circumstances of your life is with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zootor. You are doing a job protecting our earth.
Not only that, but that is an important part of it.
Yes. You're a long way from home. In order for people to understand the selfless act that you are carrying out, could you tell them, please, in the understanding of our human mind and the measurement of kilometers, how many kilometers you work away from your home and family?
Before I do that, they must have a balance and understand that I have the ability to communicate freely with them at any time, and they with me. And it is through how we connect with each other, so I am only absent physically. I cannot give it to you in that measure, but if it was that I was to start from my home, come back to earth, and go back to my home, that would take in your years 50 years. Travelling at the speed that earth can travel at, not at the speed I can. It is therefore less. But as earth understands speed and measures it through sound and how many times they can go faster than sound, etc., it would take 50 years, much less for us, because we do not rely on forcing our way through anything. That's one of the great problems of technology, or the lack of it on earth. everything seems to rely upon force. They have no deep understanding of harmonic balance. But this is not the moment to go into that. Technological changes available to the earth are immense, and we know it and would share it if someone had the ears to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. You have now heard and seen trance mediumship at its very zenith from the most accomplished trance medium, Ian Rogers, in the world today. Ian and I, as members of the council, together, our message to you today would be, please make change immediately in your life. Thank you for watching and listening.